So are we waiting for that? Oh, there we go. Okay.
We're in.
I'd like to call our meeting to order for the Tree Board, March 6th, 2019. If you'd all stand, please, so we could say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Looks like we do have a quorum, and we have a new member of our tree board that I'd like to announce, Adrienne Deutsch, to my far left. So if each of you would go ahead and just say your names, then she'll hear who all is on the tree board today.
I'm Charles.
Richard.
Stormy Biven.
Debbie Evans.
Steve Lisi.
Thank you. First item on our agenda is the approval of the December 5th, 2018 Tree Board minutes. Hopefully you all have had a chance to look them over. And if there are any corrections or clarifications, now is the time. I'll actually start it out. I have one clarification. On the last page of the minutes, under comments, section 8, last paragraph. Stormy Biven requested if the tree board minutes of the previous meeting be sent to her before any upcoming blah, 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 blah. I'd like it, I think what I said was the previous meeting be sent to her as soon as available, and then continue on before any upcoming tree board meeting. The intent was to get the minutes as soon as I could, not right before the next meeting. So I think that needs to be in there to clarify. Adrienne?
May I make a couple of small questions on this, please?
Sure.
Under old business on the HOA education on hat racking, it was stated that HOAs are required to maintain the invasive plants within their communities. I would hope they aren't.
Yeah, I had noticed that very same thing, and I went so far as to look at the video from the meeting in December, and Brian actually said control.
Okay.
Instead of maintain?
Maintain, so, right.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm afraid I'm a proofreader at heart, so bear with me here.
Speak into the mic if you would,
Ah,
please.
I'm sorry. This is the one?
I think both of them, as long as they have green lights on them, they both should be active.
Thank you. Could you just enlighten me as to how we're defining invasives? Are those prohibited invasives or FLEPC invasives or UF invasives?
Brian, you want to comment?
It is based on the FLEPC list, but only a portion of that list that's pertinent to our region.
Right.
So we don't bother to call out the prohibited tree list that occurs in the code, doesn't have every FLEPC species on there. It has the ones that, are a problem down here.
Thank you.
And just for some clarification, we say FLEPC, we're talking about the Florida Exotic Pest Plant Council?
That is correct.
Okay.
Hang on a moment. Question on the tree seedling giveaway. It says that you'll be distributing firebush. Are you distributing native firebush or non-native firebush?
Absolutely native firebush.
Okay. And on the same paragraph that Stormy commented on, just being picky, I guess, here, but I think she requested that the minutes be sent to her rather than if they be sent, or if they could be sent.
Well, I actually did request if they could,
Oh,
because
sorry.
that needed to be checked into if that was allowable to send it ahead of time. So this is correct.
But then there should be a could in there. They could be sent. I warned you I was a proofreader.
And where would you like that word to go?
Could be sent.
Could be sent. Between meeting and be.
Okay. Do you have that, Michelle? Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. May I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
Motion. I'll
Steve
second.
motions.
I'll second it.
Charles seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next item on our agenda, staff updates, recent plantings, status updates. Brian, take it
Yes.
away.
All right, so from the time since the last tree board meeting, this period is our quote-unquote winter, so it's not a big time for us as far as tree planting goes. However, we were able to plant a total of 53 trees since the last tree board meeting. There was 14 silver buttonwoods in Village Park, 14 black ironwood in Village Park, 13 lignum vitae out on Flying Cow, all of those being native species. Also, we did an enhancement project on Wellington Trace that involved the planting of 12 Chinese fan palms. So that brings us to a total of 53. As far as other news, I know that we'll be talking about the Earth Arbor Day event later, but in sort of the same vein of being Earth Day, we have our annual seedling giveaway that we do to the schools. There's been a slight change to the lineup and seedlings based on availability, and I think it's actually a good thing. This year to the school kids, we're gonna be giving away the native coral honeysuckle in little liner starts. So this is, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. It's a native vine that has long tubular red flowers. It's attractive to hummingbirds and butterflies. And the great thing is it's not highly aggressive and taking over your whole yard like a lot of other vines do. So that's what we're going to be doing for just the school kids. And we'll have lots of other stuff for the actual Earth Day event, which we'll get into later.
And Brian, thank you for providing the tree count for the past year to the Wellington Garden Club president, Carol Coleman. Annually, the Garden Club reports how many trees within the village that we are aware of that have been planted since the last year. So we are able to claim, if you will, all the municipal trees that are planted as well as those of individual residents.
Right.
Thanks.
No problem at all. If it's ever needed, we have a expertly maintained Excel spreadsheet of all the trees that were planted over the course of the last year and going back about 6 years since I started. So that is available if anyone needs to know.
Great. Item 6, under old business. I guess we are on to the Flower Award nominations. And in your packet, of course, is the criteria for the Flower Award and also all of the nominees for this year. Hopefully, you all have had a chance to drive around and take a look at them. And I guess what we do at this point is we talk about them one by one and give our feedback. So we should start with the first one. Address 491 Indigo Avenue. Does anybody want to make any comments on that? It was not indicated, the check mark, whether it's for landscape or tremendous tree, but I get the feeling it was not a specific tree. It was for the landscape as a total.
I don't have a mic. Not that I'm not.
Oh,
You wanna share?
well, you can have this.
Do you want to take this
I'm
one? and
hogging
give
your
them
mic,
that
and I'll take
Will
this
that
one.
reach over here?
one?
Here you go. Here's one.
Here.
All right. We're good. We're good. Now I got two mics. I would have liked to have seen some verbiage here, what we're looking at. What are they, you're saying that they are pointing out the whole landscape? You think that's what they're doing?
I think the landscape is being nominated, not a specific tree, because on our form, you either categorize it as landscape or tremendous tree.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything like being bragged about here, like give a brief description.
My copy has the comments on the very bottom of
I
it.
don't
Does
have
yours
that.
not?
No, I've got nothing. How about you? You got anything?
Not on
No,
mine.
I got nothing here.
I
Wait a
can.
minute, you know what? I think there is a page. Oh, no, that's from Debbie's with the list.
There are a couple of pictures on the second
Right.
page.
You're looking at Indigo Avenue, correct?
Right.
Right. Do you have anything in here?
I do. I can read it
Want
to
to
you.
read it?
Yeah,
I
will you
would love
read
to
it?
hear
Our copy does not.
It says, "The yard is so attractive. She changes and adds to the yard seasonally. Low water needed. It makes one want to stop and observe how artistically landscaped and beautiful this yard appears."
That's good enough for me, actually. Yeah.
Did you have an opportunity to see it?
Not this one. I went to the other one. Did anybody else? I went to the next one, actually, which
Oh,
had,
I went to this one.
the one
What
on
did you think?
White
What'd you think?
Terrace.
I thought there was an awful lot of grass
Yeah.
as a lawn. I'm questioning the low water usage because it looked to me from across the street like all the annual type plantings were impatiens, which are not known for low water usage. But it was very neat, it was very well maintained, and it was certainly visually attractive from the street.
Yeah, I can concur, really, with your statements. I did go there. The picture, of course, is from December, so what you see when you go is not really what is portrayed here in the picture. And I wasn't sure about the placement of some of the trees I was looking at, on whose property they were. So I pulled it up on the property appraiser's website, and while there's some good numbers of trees in the back on one side, because there is a swimming pool back there, the trees that are on the side seem to be on the properties on either side. And before knowing that even, I looked at it and I said, oh, this house could use more trees. And it would be nice to see them plant one or two more and do the same thing with them that they did with that one area where she's united the 3 trees, I think it is, because that's a good thing to do. And then you've got something more.
Right. I believe it was a group of bald cypress that was in their front yard that, of course, was probably, maintained or, original issue trees that were there.
Yeah, and there were a lot of air plants in those cypress, I thought,
what is your opinion, Brian, of this property?
I agree with some of the other comments that were made. I think the pop really comes from those annual flowers, and yes, they are not low water, so that that's a given. I do think it was, visually appealing. It has nice pop from the flowers. They did, maintain those cypress trees, so that's a plus. So I didn't see anything that was really would make me give pause to seeing it go forward. I didn't think that I wanted to block it by any means.
Okay.
So I concur with all of what is being said. My reaction to it, even though it had a lot of grass, the grass was in good condition. It seemed to be maintained well. The property was manicured. It was neat and clean. Yes, the annuals are what provided the pop of color on the property, although they are thirsty little devils, agreed. But I liked the air plants and the bald cypress, and I just thought, as a whole, it had nice curb appeal. And I thought, people living in the neighborhood, driving by, would find it aesthetically pleasing.
But having just the impatiens in the plant scheme, that wouldn't negate the property being a candidate, would it?
It would not.
Okay.
Not in the landscape format.
So does any other comments?
Is it the consensus to let it move forward in the process?
I'll make a motion that it should receive an award.
Is there a second?
Doesn't bother me. at all.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Mm.
Any opposed? Okay.
I'm abstaining. I just see it has more potential.
Okay. So let's move on to the next one.
I saw this one.
This one is on Rye Terrace.
Amazing.
This is being considered for the landscape portion. We'll start at the left. Any comments? Adrian?
I certainly like the fact that she's got so many natives. Better? Okay. I certainly like the fact that she's got so many natives, and some of what I saw when I visited there may be a fact that we've had some recent cold snaps that may have affected those plants, but it lacked a certain visual appeal in terms of plant maintenance as I was on the street. The grass seemed to be flattened, for example. I mean, the grasses seemed to be flattened. There's nothing wrong with it, but it does not equate in any visual way to the other landscapes. I don't know if there are different standards that are being used for all native properties versus exotic properties.
I don't know that
I
we're
don't think
using a
so.
different
Yeah.
standard, but I
No. think
think just inherent to an all-native garden, that you're not going to get these wonderful,
You get what you-
vibrant,
It's true.
brilliant.
No, I wasn't looking for color.
Right,
I wasn't
right.
looking for perfectly conical anythings. But there are 3 trees at the front that are small, they're still growing, but they looked kind of sparse. And like I said, the grasses that were there seemed as if they had been flattened. Now, I was there twice, and they had that same look both times.
Can I agree with Adrian?
Yes,
I went
please.
out and looked at the same property, and I thought there were other properties on that street that had prettier visual appeal than the ones with the native species. Now, this property has a lot of natural horticulture to it, but it wasn't put together in a pleasing, pretty way for some reason. I think the other properties that on that street had more appeal to me, so I want to agree with Adrian on that.
If I could just add, there are native species with loads of pop.
Yeah, but sometimes native species are not really beautiful unless properly shown. And
But that's the point of being native.
My impression also was, I like the native plants, but it was the layout, and it was the maintenance too. I mean, the maintenance was sparse. You don't want to make it as tight as let's say, a non-native planting, but it wasn't really pleasing to look at. It was like a mishmash of things, and so I would go along with Adrian also on that.
Yeah, and this was, I know, submitted in February, and I did put a note down there at the bottom that said they were on the Florida Native Plant Society Fall Garden Tour. And I have to say, it did look a lot better then than it does now. So I think with the rains coming, you know, I think it'll take care of itself. Yes, they do. Mm-hmm, yeah.
So I'll make this comment. I actually used my GPS to get there, and I drove by the property 3 times, not knowing that was the property I was supposed to be looking at, even though my GPS told me that was the address. But until I looked at the mailboxes and really, really looked, I finally realized that's what I was supposed to be looking at. So I didn't expect to have some, you know, fabulous, colorful, you know, garden. But in retrospect, I would say probably when it was seen and nominated, it was in better condition.
Condition. Mm-hmm, yep.
Yeah.
I would only add that I would say the propensity of how much was put and the thought of all the lists of what she did or these people did. And I saw it too. I said, you know, it overwhelms any soft spots in aesthetics. I would have to say that I admire the thought which people have to do to put natives in. And this is a lot of thought. And this was not, even though it may not look, it's not going to look like Olympia on the outside. It's still what we're supposed to be striving toward. And I have to admire it for that. Go ahead.
Sorry, I agree with a lot of the comments on that have been made. I will just throw in there that there's a lot of sunshine mimosa ground cover, and I can tell you that's extremely hard to maintain and keep weed free. And the fact that they have kept it in the condition it's in means they're paying attention to it. So while, you know, there may be opportunity for improvement in the layout, I do know they're tending to that mimosa because I didn't see any big weeds in it, and that's a tall order for that ground cover.
I think they should be commended for their efforts and trying, you know, to go native.
Right. I didn't see any glaring issues that would prevent it from being moved forward.
So is there a motion to award this property,
I'm going
the
to
flower award?
I'll make a motion to award it.
Okay, and I'll second it since I nominated it.
Okay. I guess this is when we'd have discussion, but we had discussion
we
already.
did.
So, all those in favor of moving forward to award this property, the Flower Award, say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to go aye also. Any opposed?
Sorry, 3 to 3.
We are tied.
3 to 3.
Can we give it a
This is
lethal
why
award?
That's a tree
Um,
board.
Where is Kay?
Yeah.
We need a
I'm
tiebreaker.
trying to think what you do in the case of a tie like
You
this.
got to ask that lady over there. She knows
Do
all
I
that
get a
stuff. I think
Adrian, Charles, Steve.
I don't know. We can check.
Where's my Robert's Rules of Order book that I should be
No,
looking at?
Online, it's
Isn't it like in
online.
the Senate, it gets the speaker, doesn't he get to, how's it work? I don't know, they just
You
sit
think
there.
the big kahuna gets more power, more weight?
I think that, what's his name, Paul Ryan, that sits in the back there, you know, looking around, wondering what Trump's thinking, something like that. I don't know, isn't there like a rule, is,
We can get back to you on that if you'd like, or if you'd
I'm
want
really
to.
not certain how to handle this
I'm not
right
certain
now.
either, and all I can tell you is if my impression of this whole process is I will not, speak up to prevent something from moving forward unless I see a glaring issue with it. I saw no real glaring issue with this property. I think it wasn't the most spectacular property I've ever seen, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Seasons change. There was no problems with it. I'm not opposed to it being moved being moved ahead. So
One question I have for everyone, I know the homeowner was very nice, I thought, in sending the list of all the plants so that you could click on them if you looked at your email with the agenda and everything. I'm curious, did everyone do that so you can see what the plants look like? I know you're more aware of what they'll see, what they look like at maturity and everything, and when they're flowering and all that, which I thought would be a good exercise for everyone, really, to get acquainted with some of these native plants.
I think perhaps what we could do is table this vote for right now and bring it up at the end and just see if anybody has thought about it and may be voting differently at the end of our vote.
all right.
You're
We
gonna
may
bring it up
wind
again
up,
At the end of the meeting, then?
pardon me?
Bring it up again at the end of the meeting for a revote.
Yeah, and we may still be where we are, but
May I make one comment before you do that? Just looking through the list again, because I haven't looked at it in the last week or so. There are loads of plants on here that actually offer color and are currently in bloom, or at least some of them currently are, but I did not see them in the front.
Brian, were you going to say something?
Well, it is a reply to that comment that you never know, they could be in the back where we're unable to look. And I did see that list, and if I remember right, a lot of those plants are rather small, so we may have missed them as well. The only other option I could suggest to you, Stormy, is that we get Kay's vote by email, and she could be a tiebreaker.
You can do
Yeah,
that
but
too.
you could actually put it aside for now and then bring it up at another point in the meeting and revote it if you want to.
If that's
Sure.
the case, I would suggest we see that property, say at another,
Well, then you have to
Prior to
postpone
the
it to
next-
another meeting.
yeah, in other
Well-
words, make it, table it to the next meeting,
Yeah.
but we all make a point of it to go out to the property, say, because you know how landscapes are, they're dynamic, they're always changing. And that thing could look twice as pretty to tomorrow, but it's not even pretty that it gets to me.
But our next meeting isn't until June. That will be after
That's
Earth
after the
Day.
award,
That's
yeah.
the time that we do the award. Now, if we revisited, let's call it in 2 weeks,
Okay.
it can look very different in 2 weeks, and we would then conduct a vote by email,
We could do,
if we are allowed to do that,
I
and
think
that would then allow Kay to vote as well.
yeah, well, you can have I think you can have a motion without a meeting, depending on if it's very specific and talks about nothing else. In other words,
You're saying by email?
yeah, I think so. I'm going to make the motion that we can make this vote by email, assuming Kay goes out there or some other board member goes out there and tell her we need her. I think.
Michelle, is that something you could check on and see if we are able to do that?
Yes, I can look into it.
Okay. All right, so I think we're going to table this for right now and move on to the next
Okay,
one.
Sounds good.
Okay, the next one is on 12th Fairway, and it is being recommended for the tremendous tree part of this recognition award.
Okay, I see now.
And I'll go ahead and motion that we accept this for the tremendous tree category.
I'll second that.
I'll second it. I'll third it.
Adrian seconds it. Now is time for discussion.
Yeah, it's a tree.
No, it's a huge tree. It's pretty amazing there.
It is well maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, yeah, absolutely.
I will say that when I first saw it last year at this time, when going to look at something else on that street, I thought it actually was in better condition. It is just leafing out again right now. And it was brought to my attention that perhaps part of the reason it's not looking as glorious as when I saw it last year is that it wasn't pruned particularly well this year. I think that someone who has lots of horticultural knowledge would notice that, but I think that most people would not, and they would look at it and go, wow, that's a big tree and beautiful. So, I guess any other discussion, then we can take a vote.
Yeah, no, just in regard to the comment about the pruning, I know what I was looking for was hat racking, which I really couldn't see that there had been some done, or if there ever had been. It had been so long ago that everything seems to be okay with what exists there now. But it was definitely one of the best oak trees I think I've seen here in the town. And I don't think people prune their trees every year.
That would be a very expensive tree to
Right,
prune every year.
So,
Yes.
you know,
If it's been pruned all along, they probably don't need to.
right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know too that, well, I know with the oak trees that we have on our property, just with the winds that we had recently, there was an awful lot of leaf drop. So I can't imagine what must have come off of that tree.
Like
Yeah.
living in the north.
Mm-hmm. And just got swept up, you know, when mowing the lawn,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so.
Yeah, what I noticed about it was I was the one that pointed out to Stormy that it looked like the last trim job they had on it a few months ago. They didn't hat rack it per se hard. What they did was come around all the outside and nipped all the very ends of the branches. We're talking about, small diameter branches. So they, essentially shaped it. And what the problem with that is all the new growth that resprouts out there at the end of the branch, and it makes those branches heavy. It's not what I would consider a proper pruning job for, an oak tree. It's not ruined forever, but it's also not the thing to do, not proper.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So you were able to see that. Well, I think part of, let's see, what I want to say here.
but it was a very big, spectacular tree. Great
Yeah, it
size,
goes to
great
say.
bones. Absolutely.
Did any of you see those very nice bottle brush trees that were not far from it also? That might be something to consider for next year. Put it in the back of your head.
Given the comment about the pruning, since you were able to see that and it had been recently done, I'm curious maybe how long these people have owned this property. You know, if that would affect the maintenance of the tree. You know,
Don't know, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's part of the criteria.
I know it's not. What I'm thinking is if the previous owners maintained it better than the current owners, type
How
of thing.
old would you estimate
can
the
we-
tree?
educate them.
How old would you estimate? I'd say
More than 50 years
50
old?
years old.
About, right, 50,
I think the
60
statute of
maybe.
limitations ran out of that.
One of Wellington's earliest trees.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of moving this forward for tremendous tree recognition, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next one, which might be, oh no, there's another one after that. This is on Quercus in Pinewood East. I believe this is being recommended for the landscape portion of the award. Is there a motion to move forward on this? Or is there a motion to consider this, I guess I should say, for the award?
Well, I'll make a motion since I,
Nominated it.
Put it
That's
up
always
there.
good to
Okay, is there a
support your
second?
nomination.
I'll second it. I'll second it, yeah.
Okay, now we can discuss it.
I
Adrian?
There is, right at the front of the property, a tree with a significant and obvious amount of damage to it, which does not exactly have a lot of visual appeal. I mean, it's like a big, dark streak down the whole half of the trunk. Is that fair? Ah, sorry, thank you. Said, there is considerable damage to the tree that is nearest the street. It
That
looks
must
like-
be the Royal Poinciana? Yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed the same thing.
And it doesn't have a lot of visual appeal from that point of view.
Yeah. I know I had mixed feelings about it. I actually wrote down the plants that I recognized, and then went and looked them up to see if they were grouped according to their water needs and stuff, which they did seem to be. But I did notice, and two things in particular. Well, I guess I should say three things. One, I could not identify the shrub material, and it was nice what they did with the archway.
It looked
You know,
nice,
that
though.
was nice. The other thing was I noticed they had a huge scheffalera there on the north side of the house, and then I noticed what I think is, well, I know it's a scheffalera, and I'm sure it's just a volunteer, you know, that is growing up there in the center. So those were things that I noticed. And again, I thought I liked the color and everything. And yes, they grouped the plants, and I looked at the lawn and I said, oh, they have such more potential here. So those are my thoughts.
Was that Schleffera on the property?
Yes,
And I presume your comment is because that's an invasive species.
exactly.
It is.
It's not only invasive, it's a prohibited invasive.
Right.
I do have a picture of it, and maybe somebody whose eyes are better than mine, is this acceptable to show a picture?
Yeah, sure, I can see it. Yeah.
Because when I enlarged it, hang on, let me find the right one.
Pinewood East always seems to have a lot of Schleferas right behind their wall. Am I correct? You ever drive it by it on the right?
Well, you're not required to remove them unless you're going for a C of O or you're near a natural area.
We're actually planning on removing all those schefflers at
I
the
wouldn't
entrance
mind.
of the
Thank you.
neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Ar-
Oh, is that
Already,
your
already
plan?
obtained the bids and the PO is in process.
Where is, you're
You know
going to
what I'm
remove
talking about,
scheffaleras where?
The entrance to Pinewood
Yeah,
East.
if you look
Oh,
at
good, good.
over the wall, it's right over the wall. They're hanging over.
they've been there
Yeah,
forever.
forever,
Yeah. Right.
yeah. Maybe that's where they're coming from in my yard.
I was-
Adrian, what are you wanting to show us?
I wanted to show you a close-up of that plant because it looked like a schefflera to me, but when I do a close-up of it, the tips of the leaves look blunt, not rounded like a schefflera normally would be. So unless it's a variant schefflera, I'm thinking, could it be something else?
I
You
think it
talking about
is.
the one there at the corner of the house?
The one by the side of the house, the big guy.
Yeah, right up
This
there
almost
against
looks
the
like that
house, yeah.
philodendron type of.
No, it's not a philodendron.
You know
It's
that the fat one that
Yeah.
nobody likes? Yeah.
Deliciosa, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it's definitely not that. It's a very different leaf shape.
I'll make a comment on this. I mean, the fact that it has an invasive species on I would have to,
That looks like a Schefflera.
I wouldn't like that, you know.
The form looks like a Schefflera to me, but the
wouldn't want it.
leaf, I'm not so sure about.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a Schefflera leaf like that.
I mean, it couldn't be a Raphid palm, a clump of Raphid palms.
No,
That I
lady,
don't
lady
know.
palms are too small. For
Yeah.
that.
What was that comment you made, Brian, about Scheffleras? They have to come out? Did you say that?
No, they're invasive exotic. They're on the Florida Pest Plant Council's list of invasive exotics.
And,
I
and
think
the
it's
ru-
class 1. You know, the worst of the
We're the
worst.
worst. So you're
Right.
They're
supposed to.
also one of the county's 9 prohibited
So
invasives.
no,
Right.
are you mandatorily have to take them out?
We don't go around enforcing removal of Scheffleras. It's a case like Adrian
Oh,
mentioned
okay.
that, you
There you
know,
go.
if it's, you know, under construction, they would need to take it out.
Right.
You know, really code only enforces the really, really bad trees. In their eyes, it's, you know, Australian pine, melaleuca, Brazilian pepper is probably our number one.
I would say that's the number one.
Yeah. So, you know, the carrot woods and the Scheffleras, they don't really, they don't go after them too much as far as
Okay.
trying to enforce removal.
Brian, excuse me, would you take a look at this?
So I'm getting a feeling that the majority here is not in favor of moving this forward.
Schefflera.
But we're going to take a vote.
Okay.
All those in favor of awarding the flower award to this property, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
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 Sorry.
Motion does not carry.
It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one thing I'm curious about, I know discussion, we've already taken the vote and everything, but I was curious. I didn't know if this was somebody you perhaps knew.
No, I don't
No.
know them.
You know, if they even know that they have such a plant on their property and the invasive nature of it. You know, my feeling is probably not.
They probably don't, because up north, the Schefflera is a standard house and office plant, and they just would figure, hey, it's a familiar plant.
Right, and down here, it's just, they see it.
I distribute the prohibited plants brochure, and people are almost always stunned when they find Schefflera is one of the 9 worst.
And I
Yeah.
bet they say, but it gives that big, beautiful red bloom.
No, fortunately, I haven't gotten a lot of that recently.
All right, the last one under consideration is the property on Horseshoe Trace.
I will motion that we discuss this.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Richard seconds. Okay. Discussion time.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I'll be the big mouth lady.
Go ahead, Adrian.
It is beautifully maintained, definitely low water. The question, to my mind, is bromeliads have the issue of, do they cup the water to breed mosquitoes, especially when massed? Is that something we want to reward?
I would say that you have to, when you plant native plants, you get what you get. In other words, if you planted a native plant and it attracted bees, it might be its nature to do that. Mosquitoes, if it traps water to attract mosquitoes, a lot of plants do things to maintain themselves, and in the process, maybe, it's just the nature of things. So I would have to say it's not a detraction if the person wants to live with extra mosquitoes, if that's what you're getting at.
Oh, if they would keep the mosquitoes on their property, I would be delighted.
Well, I wouldn't imagine the mosquito would go from, you know, I mean, I have mango trees in my backyards that are attacked by squirrels. Even after I give them one, they still come back for more. So it doesn't matter, but I'm not going to take the mango out just because I got a couple squirrels bothering my neighbors.
Truthfully, to my mind at least, squirrels and bees are a different class of bee.
Well, it's a pest. You know, they can be pests. Yeah. I can't see, you know, there's air plants, they're all over the place, you know, and they're natural and they're beautiful. And you get what you get.
I don't see it as being a detriment either.
No, I can't see it being a detriment.
Yeah. One thing I think too, you know, I understand fully where you're coming from, you know, about the bromeliads in the water, you know, but we also find frogs in them too, which eat the mosquitoes. And also, I think anytime you're dealing with any sort of a damp environment, like I've noticed when I am doing clipping of my plants, I have taken the material and I'll put it in a can with a bag in the can. And if I don't cover it up, I will get mosquitoes in there. And it's not wet, it's just as things decay. If I don't cover it up, I've noticed I'll come out there and I'll move it and all of a sudden mosquitoes will fly out. So it's not just a matter of little places of water, it's just anywhere there's moisture, you know,
No,
and it's just something we have to deal with. So, you know, I don't see that as a detriment to moving forward
Just
with
as
this
the
one.
new person, I'm trying to understand for myself what the guidelines and the rules
Right.
and the criteria are here.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely. And then I guess if you want to weigh the lesser of the evils, so if you have a landscape full of very needy water plants, you know, plants that are very needy in water versus bromeliads that may or may not have mosquitoes, and also there are controls for the mosquitoes, whether they do it or not, you know, I can't comment on that. So what's the lesser of the evils? But I don't think that would prevent it from moving forward for consideration.
One other further comment that I did notice about this property was that the little, I guess you could call it, of the little patio that they built, the slats, you know, I thought that was so unique. And to me, that even though it's not plant material, the fact that they did that so they could sit outside their house and enjoy that front area, I thought was so nice, because you just don't see that, you know.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
to me, that really helped make it.
Yeah, I think the combination of both the landscaping, you know, the softscaping and the hardscaping was a nice combination.
Just one thing I wanted to add, the resident was out there when I stopped by to look at this property, and I got the chance to speak with him. And I'll just say that I think that if someone from the garden club were to ever reach out to him, and I did get his name and number, I think he would be receptive to being on a list for a tour or anything like that. He's very much into succulents, bromeliads. You know, he has all the different agaves, some of them very rare. So he is an enthusiast that would be receptive to probably some dialogue with the garden club.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian actually shared that with me already, and I know of this person.
Okay.
So any more discussion?
No, not from me.
All those in favor of awarding this property the flower award for landscape, say aye.
I
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item. Oh, by the way, did you know that we fine you $25 if your phone isn't off? I forgot to
Fine.
say that at the beginning of the
Make you
meeting.
replace
Right.
all of the dead ficuses throughout the village
Yeah.
by hand.
Next agenda item is under new business, Earth Arbor Day, and I think we have Michelle Garvey here to speak on that.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Michelle Garvey. I'm the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. This is Chris O'Connor. He is the Community Programs Coordinator for the Village of Wellington. He handles all the programming within the Wellington Community Center, and he's also assisting me with special events. So eventually I will pass this event along to Chris as my duties shift. This year, kind of the same format for Earth and Arbor Day as we've had in years past. We're going to have our food trucks present, some type of main food and then a dessert truck. Smokey Bear has been contacted. I'm not sure of his availability yet. If there are any wildfires in the area, of course, they cannot attend. That's what happened to us last year. They were all set on coming, and then there was a wildfire. We will have our coloring mural, again. The Art Society usually assists us with that. We have the kids are able to color a mural with crayons. Face painting, free face painting that day. Also, vendors, I sent out the invitation to the vendors yesterday, and I've already gotten 6 to 7 responses, so it's a very popular event they like to be part of. And that is the only cost for the event if you choose to buy anything at a vendor booth or the food trucks. Joe DiMaggio Hospital is once again one of our sponsors, and they'll be giving away reusable bags. Free seedlings, as usual, from our Public Works Department. And Brian will also be giving information on proper pruning techniques. And then we will have our annual tree planting with the council. This year it's the Shady Lady Black Olive tree. And that will be done around the Wellington Amphitheater area. Does anyone have any questions?
The free native shrubs, what are you giving out and in what size? Are those the firebush and the?
It will be firebush in small containers, either a 1 or 2 gallon container, and then actually, I take that back. The firebush is going to be little liners, so those will be very easy to transport. The shrub that's going to be in the small 1 or 2 gallon container is Walter's viburnum, which is another native flowering shrub. So we're going to have two native flowering shrubs to give away. In years past, it seems like that's the type of plant that went quick and everyone wanted, and so we're gonna try to have more of the crowd pleasers here at the event.
How many will you have on hand for each?
I think there's around 1,200 firebush available, and then the Walters viburnum is somewhere in the 400 to 500 range.
Thank you.
That's the viburnums under contract grow with a local native nursery, and the firebush are coming from liners from a propagation company in Orlando. So any of those liners that are left over, we'll take them and pot them up and use them in the landscape. Or maybe even save them for the National Public Lands Day planting later in the year.
I forgot to mention the most important part. It will be held on April 27th from 4 to 7 at the Wellington Amphitheater. Usually we do it the weekend before, but because Easter is the weekend before and we have our annual egg hunt, we had to bump it back a weekend.
Okay. I have a question. Gee, I didn't hear you mention any environmental organizations coming, Audubon or any
Every
of
year we
those.
try to reach out. Usually they're very busy
Right.
with the Earth Day. I know
Everything
Chris
goes on.
has reached out prior. We will reach out again this year to see if they want to join us, but unfortunately most of the time.
Okay. One thing I did notice back in January, I think it was, there was an article in the Town Crier, which I did bring with me today. It was about, it says, noted landscape photographer to speak at Audubon Photo Club meeting. So I sent an email to the contact person, only within the last couple of days, though. The Audubon Photo Club meets at St. Michael's here in Wellington, and the local group is known as the Audubon Everglades. And I know that they are really big on giving bird tours out here at the at STA1 East, because I've been a couple of times. And the fact that they are so local like that, if maybe you all could reach out with them and I will try to follow up.
If you can share that contact information, I know you have my email, just send it to me and we'll
Okay.
get on it.
Okay, will do.
Is this flyer final so that I could send it to the garden club and they could e-blast it to all the members?
Yep.
Okay,
I'll send it to you.
thank you.
And of course, the council will do the proclamations for Arbor Day and Earth Day to kick off this event that day as well.
The firebush trees that he's going to provide actually do draw hummingbirds, because I've lived in Florida my entire life, and I never saw a hummingbird until I planted his firebush in my backyard.
Very
They're
nice.
little tiny birds about this big, and their
Yeah.
wings go real fast. I was stunned to see that in my backyard.
Brian, are we getting the Walters viburnum from Indian Trails or another vendor?
That was Indian Trails is doing the contract grow on it. The source was another vendor in liner size. I handed it off to Indian Trails to do the contract
Okay.
grow.
Thanks. Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, we look forward to another great event. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. I guess this would be a good time to ask, are all of you planning on being available for some portion of that time? It's 3 hours, 4 to 7. What we've done in the past is sometimes we do shifts. Somebody will come for an hour and then some, others will come for an hour.
I'm not available that weekend, sorry.
Okay.
That's the same weekend as the Mounts Plant Sale, and I'm committed to work there.
Okay.
It's up
I'll
to
be
you,
there.
I'll put in an hour.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to be there either this year.
Wow.
I'm going to be on the other side of the world. It's going to be a
Put
little
in an
difficult.
I'm doing yoga that day.
Come on,
Are you
Richard.
watching the wallpaper peel also that day?
Well, actually, I am a yoga instructor.
I know you are. I know you are. So you're not able to be there.
Probably not,
Okay.
but I never can make that commitment because I'm
Looks-
never sure.
So it's
Looks
one
like it's you and me.
1.5 hours.
Okay, and if it was the weekend before, I wouldn't have been there, so, okay.
All right. Well, we will be there with all of our brochures and literature to distribute as usual.
Okey-dokey.
One thing I wanted to throw in that I forgot to mention when I was doing the staff updates portion before we move on to the work plan, if I may.
Sure.
We did receive preliminary confirmation that we got both the Tree City USA and the Growth Award. I don't think that that was talked about in the last meeting, but I got the email from the state saying that they had reviewed the application and everything looked fine to them, and it was being forwarded on to the Arbor Day Foundation. I see no reason why the Arbor Day Foundation would, go against what the state said. So it looks like we are in line for that as well.
Excellent.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How many years does this make for the Growth Award?
The Growth Award, I believe, is going to be 12.
12, okay.
Okay, on to the draft of the 2019 Tree Board Annual Work Plan. I don't think there are any changes from last year's. Am I right, or am I wrong on that? Brian, do you know?
I think the only changes would be if there was any project-specific items listed in here. Those would be taken off and, others added. But it's usually very similar to the previous year.
Presumably, everybody has read this, and I think what we need to do is vote and approve this.
The only thing I'd like to make a note of is under C, planning and management, Wellington to complete a tree inventory. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to fully complete it this year because we got word back that we were only partially awarded on the grant we applied for to the state. We had asked for, I think it was upwards of 30 or 40,000, the limit, so we could complete it and do a management plan based on that full completed inventory. Unfortunately, competition was fierce this year. They gave preference to communities doing tree planting, especially those up in the Panhandle that were affected by the storms. So we only received 5,000 in grant funds for the tree inventory, which in turn means, since it's a 50-50 matching grant, it would equate to $10,000 worth of inventory. I do not believe that's enough to complete it. It's going to get us close, but you know, it's going to take another round of this to get it fully completed.
So would it be better to word it like Wellington to continue with a tree inventory?
Yes. Just replace complete with continue.
And maybe add the word with in there, Adrian?
Our proofreader.
Wellington to continue with a tree inventory on village-owned property. Does that sound better to your? I'm a proofreader too, so I totally get it.
Final verdict is with? Okay.
With a tree, yeah. Wellington to continue with a tree inventory on village-owned property.
And Brian, I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said the grant amount that was partially awarded was?
It was $5,000 was the award.
Okay.
So we have to match that. So it equates to $10,000 worth of inventory and costs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the 2019 Wellington Tree Board Annual Work Plan as amended?
Motion. I'll make the motion.
Adrian moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Steve seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Did we decide that we were going to revisit that one property now, or that we were going to allow Kay to ring in with her vote if we find that we are able to email vote?
Table it.
Okay. Okay. I guess worst comes to worst. If we aren't able to do that and we aren't able to vote on that property, then perhaps it can be considered again next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you say something, Steve, that you would like to try one more vote at the end of this, before we adjourn?
Well, if you want to forward something to the later part of the meeting, you can, and then you can vote it again.
All right.
But
Not during
That's
this.
probably better to do than say an email. I don't think you can do an email.
I'm not sure.
Because it's outside the meeting. right?
Yeah.
So that's outside of, you're like creating another meeting, and we don't know if there's a quorum or not. So
I don't know how it
I'm
works.
just
I'll be
reading
honest.
what we have here in our little brochure. So probably the thing to do is be to put it towards the end of the meeting and have another vote on it. That probably is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Right,
there can never be a group email between you all.
Well,
Right.
There can be
you'd have to
direct
call an
emails
official meeting
between.
where people could actually come to the meeting, and we can't do that with an email, but we can't say, residents, come to my house, we're gonna have a meeting,
Right?
right? So it's a public entity. We're a public entity. We have to be able to allow people to come and speak, even if nobody shows up.
Well, my question was, do you want to take another vote before the end of this
I would
meeting?
say yes. Take another vote before the end of this meeting. Yep.
I motion that we take another vote to revisit that other issue.
After comments, after we move on, so at the last
You got
item
it.
of our meeting.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay,
Say nay.
not gonna change the
Char-
vote.
Okay,
That's not the vote.
all right. We will do this at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
This is our comment section. Anybody have anything else to bring up that was not on our agenda?
I had a couple of things. I went to the Arbor Day website recently to look up a couple of things, such as the Growth Award, because I was always curious what kind of went into the criteria for that, okay? I have to say, it's pretty impressive. There's a variety of things to choose from. But one thing I discovered in looking that up is that the Arbor Day now has something called Tree Board University. Have you ever seen that?
I had not
I'd
seen it
never
before
seen-
you showed it to
I
me.
mean, I haven't looked at it in years, you know, the website for the Arbor Day. And I looked at that and I said, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. It is geared toward people like us who sit on tree boards or tree committees, you know. And there is a series of, whether you want to call them classes or modules, that you do online at your own pace. And I think there were 5 of them or something. And it's really to educate you, I think, give us a broader view about what we do. So I wanted to mention that to everybody. I was not able to go on and view it because I did not want to sign up at this time because I am going to be going away for quite some time. So I didn't want to do anything until I got back. But it really looked rather interesting there because, you know, there's so much that goes into what we're doing. You know, it's not just trees for their own sake and for the beauty, and, you know, we're becoming better informed as to their environmental benefits, but it's also urban planning and even things like reduction in crime. There's, you know, sociology and psychology reasons for planting trees. So I'm anxious to see, though, what all it does cover. So maybe we could put this as an item on the agenda for June. If any of us can take a look at it and see what we think, what we're gaining from it. The other thing was the Florida Native Plant Society is having their annual conference over on the West Coast on Crystal River. Looks like at a nice place. Plantation at Crystal River is what it's called. You can go, it's from May 16th through the 19th. You can only go for a day if you wish, rather than the whole event. But they do have some interesting seminars and talks and field trips there. So it's a good way to really, you know, see Florida. The other thing I looked up was I saw that the Florida Urban Forestry Council has already had their meeting, unless they have another one coming up in the fall. I wish I had known that it was this month down at Nova. So maybe there's a way we can keep up on these things. You know, make them part of our agenda. Such and such organization is having a conference, you know, such and such a time and date. Because you don't have to be members of these organizations, you know, to attend their conferences. And I know that years ago, I went to 2 conferences of the Florida Urban Forestry Council, and that's how I found out about the tree canopy studies that they were encouraging cities to do, and Wellington did apply and get a grant. So that was right after the hurricanes in 2005. So things like that pay off, you know.
So are you
So-
suggesting that we just discuss these as we do here in the comments section? Or are you suggesting that
maybe make it a part of our agenda, such and such is having a conference.
So
I don't know,
just
Brian, what
announcements?
organizations do you belong to? Because it's not just a matter of us going, it's, does staff ever go? Like I noticed the Florida Urban Forestry Council has things for code enforcement. You know, and this is something that we have discussed. Do any of the code enforcement officers ever go to these events to see what's happening in other cities and how they're doing things? And
I don't know if the code enforcement officers go, but I do go. There's Florida ISA that has events. They have an annual conference, Trees Florida. They also have regional workshops. A lot of them are held at Mounts over in West Palm. There is, you know, as you mentioned, the Florida Native Plant Society has their conference. The Florida Urban Forestry Council has their conference. I've been to all of these personally. I have to maintain CEUs for my certified arborist designation from ISA. So I do keep up with them all.
Okay.
There are other courses over at Cooperative Extension / Mounts.
Right, right. So we receive notices for those. A lot of times staff will go with me. You know, the landscape division staff will attend those as well. David Flincham attends some of the ISA conferences because they also provide CEUs for landscape architects, and he does have that, you know, designation as well. So we're linked up and in tune to all those organizations.
okay,
Am I correct that it would be somewhat dicey for a group of us to go to any particular conference unless we were very careful not to discuss tree board business?
Yeah, we're not in a position of making decisions outside the group anyway. I mean,
Right.
It's not a called meeting.
it's not a meeting.
all right, so we can go.
You can go, yeah.
Yeah, but we are not supposed to discuss tree board business
Right, but
amongst
there's
ourselves
Right.
outside of the
Line-
meeting.
At a
Right, that's-
tree,
It doesn't mean we can't be educated, though.
right.
Right. Yeah, and I know that that time that I went, the 2 times that I went to the Florida Urban Forestry Council, I really did learn a lot. One of the best benefits was seeing what other cities were doing to increase their tree canopy, how they were doing it, issues that they had within their communities. So I found it very educational, you know.
By the way, I believe the county or Environmental Resources Management also has a tree survey that was done after the hurricanes.
This was what organization?
Environmental Resources Management?
Oh, here in Palm Beach County,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. No, I think I know what you're talking about. I think they did that countywide, right? There, and we did ours at the same time. Yep.
Has anybody looked at the two to see if they're different? The two-
I don't think so. Yeah, it would be interesting to see.
Stormy, do you want to say a word about this lethal
I'm
viral?
going to. Yeah, I am. I'm going to. So Debbie, was it your suggestion that, number one, for the next meeting, that we include a discussion about Tree Board University?
Yes.
That should be on the agenda?
Definitely.
And then, and was that the email that was sent us that listed a website? Because I didn't look at the specifics. That was that one? Okay. And then perhaps what we can do is section 8 where we say comments, we could just make it comment/announcements. And that would be the place to announce any of these happenings. I mean, this is really the opportunity for us to
Oh, sure.
exchange information.
Sure.
Can we do that, Michelle? Whatever section number it will be on this agenda, it's 8, but wherever it falls, comments/announcements.
Right, yeah, that's the sort of thing I would really like, because there is so much out there and so many different groups are doing different things.
Okay, I have an item. I brought material. On Tuesday, March 12th, there is going to be an informational presentation here at the village with Brian's help. We were able to get this schedule. I attended an informational presentation on viral necrosis of Floritam St. Augustine grass. That's quite a mouthful. More commonly known as sugarcane mosaic virus. It's changed its name a few times over the years. This is something that is becoming more prevalent in the village. It is a viral disease. It is a virus affecting lawns. And I know where I live in Lakefield West and over in Lakefield North, there have been confirmed cases. It only can be confirmed with a sample being sent to a lab. People can look at it who are knowledgeable and say, well, I can tell you that's it, but until in fact it is confirmed by the lab, you don't know that it is. Why is this important? It is becoming more of a problem throughout the village and other nearby areas. I went to a presentation at the Boynton Beach Library. It was given by Lori Albrecht, who is the Palm Beach County Extension horticulturist, and maybe I don't have,
She's a
University
cooperative
of Florida
extension agent.
Extension faculty environmental horticulturist. And if your lawn is infected with it, it will die within 3 years. And there's nothing you can do about keeping it from dying. You can't, treat it. You can't prevent it. It is spread oftentimes by perhaps landscaping machines that go from one lawn that it's infected and goes to another, or your neighbor's lawn is infected and it just moves over to yours. It is not in the soil. It is it's the sap and the blades of grass. And it's really a problem. And I know in one of the communities, one of the lake fields, they have actually put a moratorium on sending violation notices and making their residents replace it until they know more about it, because a lot of the landscapers don't know about it. So your lawn is dying, they come in, they remove it, and they replace it with the exact same thing, with the Floritam, again, with the St. Augustine Floritam. And that is very vulnerable, the most vulnerable to this virus. There are other varieties of Floritam that are much less resistant, bitter blue, palmetto, etc. So on the 12th at the community center in the Lakeview Room East, Lori is going to be making this presentation, approximately an hour. It's purely informational. Brian and I are trying to spread the word as best we can. So if you have a way, if you live in an HOA and you have an e-blast system to the residents, if you can get the word out, that would be great.
Should probably get it to board members as well, because property managers might want to go. Couple of things, because I am somewhat familiar with it just by osmosis. Lori's actually in the office next to mine. It is transmitted apparently by landscaping equipment. The problem is no commercial landscaper is going to stop between lawns and sterilize his equipment.
Of course.
There is no cure. If you want your sample tested, call Cooperative Extension for how to do it, because my understanding is you have to have some of the grass that's healthy and some of the grass that's affected, not just a sample of the grass that's affected. So don't waste your time just bringing them a piece that's dead.
Right. They cannot analyze dead grass.
But they need to see some of each,
Right.
apparently.
Right.
And Wellington is generally considered the epicenter of it. Lucky us.
So
Yeah.
could you repeat that again now? You're saying that if a lawn mower mows one grass, it's infected, and then he comes to mow your grass, the seedlings up underneath the mower are gonna transmit
Not
that
the
virus.
seedlings, but the virus.
The
Yeah.
virus is
The
gonna come to
bits
your,
of grass, the sap.
but nobody's gonna stop and clean the underside of their mower.
It's not just brush it off, it's use
Sterilize it.
chemical, essentially sterilize, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a little scary. It's a little scary.
And my understanding is that they're trying to grow more of the more resistant varieties, some of which have other problems of their own. But you can only sort of stand there and encourage the stuff to grow so fast. That's not, St. Augustine, the Floritan that we have was the go-to grass. So they have to play catch-up on growing these other varieties in the quantities needed.
Yeah, my understanding is there is a turf that is currently being developed that is going to be more resistant to this. I personally have experience in this way. I didn't have it lab tested, so I didn't know for sure that that's what I had, but in my front lawn, after researching it, I felt pretty comfortable that I may have had it. So what I did is I went to Mounts and I got a list of vendors that carried this bitter blue variety and drove out to Port Mayaca with a friend with a pickup truck and picked up a pallet of bitter blue and brought it back and resodded that area. And so far, knock on wood, it's holding its own. But, palmetto is more of a shade grass. It's going to be more susceptible to fungus, I believe, but it's more resistant to the virus. And, you can treat the fungus with a fungicide. With this, you can't treat it. So, but this is informational. Spread the word, please.
Sure.
We don't want to throw a party and not have anybody show up.
Yeah, I know this has been going on for a good number of years out here, because I know, I'm pretty sure that it's what I have in my lawn. And I think the guy next door, who has a professional lawn service, has it in his. And I've seen him spray it, but it doesn't do any good. So I think it's very timely. And I think to have this information, just this alone on hand, on Earth Day, to anticipate any questions we might get would be a good thing. And also a good way to tell people, it's time to plant things other than grass and encourage them to do so.
Good point.
So,
By the way, for stuff like this, if you go to the IFAS website, you can print out this and any other information on plant stuff and a lot of other things that's backed by research.
So if no one has anything else, I guess we're going to revisit that vote.
a couple of things. I'm sorry. I noted in the minutes, as well as when I was looking at the video last night to find out about what we were discussing about the maintain versus control, that we were talking about the invasive exotic brochure. And there was something about bringing one to the meeting.
Yes.
There's the county one, and there's the one that the tree board did, and here, in Wellington did. And then I also found from 2017, there was this one that you gave to us. This was from Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County prohibited plants, and you had great pictures, great information. Maybe that's the same brochure you have? I'm not sure.
Yep.
Okay.
It's
So I
actually been revised since 2017.
Okay. So I think it would be great to have this at Earth Day as well.
This is made by
There, good group.
Yes, they are.
Are we able to get some of those?
I think I know where I could find some.
We already have that brochure, and we plan to bring it to the event like we
Okay.
did before. I don't know that we have the revised version. I'll double check.
Very simple.
Mm-hmm.
If it's got an orange border here, it's the revised version.
I don't think that's the one we have. I think we had the one from prior to 2017.
And Debbie, I'm glad you brought that up. I had that written down here. I
good,
was the
okay.
one who said that I thought I still had the one that the tree board had
Did.
put together,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, 10 years ago at least. I searched all of my files and records and could not find it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I know we
Whoever
did.
do, I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've looked pretty thoroughly a couple of times, but I may come across it yet. It was like a 4x6 or 5x7 little pamphlet.
Right, I
It
remember
was
it.
done a lot of years ago. It was talking about alternatives to plant
Mm-hmm.
to
Right.
invasive species.
That's
It's probably in the archives somewhere here, but I don't know. I thought I still had it. Maybe I could talk to some of the previous tree board members who might have it. I could contact a few of them. Anything else before we do a revisit? Okay, so I believe we're talking about the property on Rye Terrace. Is that correct? Okay. So we had a motion and second before, but I think we might need to have another motion to revisit and reconsider this property for the Flower Award. Is there a motion to do that?
Well, yes. The motion to discuss.
Okay, so Richard moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Debbie seconds. Is there any further discussion? Okay, then we can move to a vote. All those in favor of awarding the Flower Award to the property on Rye Terrace, say aye.
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 Oh,
Okay, that's 4. All those not in favor, say nay.
Nay.
Motion
Okay.
carries to move it forward and award to this property.
Okay,
Is there a motion to adjourn?
absolutely.
I think Richard moved and
Second.
Steve seconded.
And it,
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We
Aye.
are adjourned.
okay.
I was gonna say nay on that.